Good evening, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, November 14th, 2022. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg, and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes is 7 p.m. A warm welcome is extended to councillors, staff, and any others who are going to participate in our meeting this evening. And our IT guru wants us to change something. There we go. Oh, it's helpful to have a camera, isn't it? Thank you. Now you can see me. Okay, so a warm welcome to those who are participating in tonight's meeting. Councillors are in the council chambers and Listowel, joined by the clerk and some staff who are supporting the meeting. We are still supported by various digital technologies, and some may join us by web conferencing tonight. Some members of the public have also joined us in the chamber this evening. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers as able are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous people in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of this land. May we all live with respect and on this land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after this meeting as an archived video. To those viewing this meeting via the YouTube channel, a warm welcome to you. To those present in the gallery today by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and/or unacceptable behavior and/or comments. Thank you. At this time, I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. I have regrets tonight from Councillor Matt Duncan. Let us move to item 2.1 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol, at this time, I invite all councillors with perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing, if not already done, to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Colleagues, I'm aware of two of us who have already so indicated. Deputy Mayor Kellum, let's start with you. Let me find your microphone first. There we go.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mayor Kaysenberg, I would like to declare pecuniary interest on item number 5.5.2 related to the increase in fees at Perth Metals, and subsequently 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw, is my mother and father-in-law are tenants at Perth Metals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I pushed the right microphone button. I too tonight have a declaration to make with regards to item 5.5.1 on our agenda. This relates to a lease agreement proposed between the municipality and the Atwood Lions. I serve as a member of the board of directors of the Atwood Lions. I therefore will also be removing myself from the confirmatory bylaw item 13.1. Are there any others who wish to make a declaration at this hour? All right, seeing none, all participants are invited to speak when called upon by yours truly, serving as chair. Those participating remotely who wish to speak may draw the attention of the clerk through our conferencing technologies chat function. Remote participants are asked to generally maintain a mute state in the web conference until I recognize your right to the floor. If when I do so recognize I don't hear you because you're having some technical difficulty, I will advise. Let's move forward then. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda of tonight's meeting that reads as follows, that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Richardson, thank you, and Councillor Seiler will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's move forward then to item 3 on our agenda, which is the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they warrant Council's recognition and/or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 8 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? I'm seeing no indication of that, so I have a motion for our consideration as follows, that consent items 3.1 to 3.8 be received for information and the minutes of the November 7th, 2022 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Behrens, thank you, and our seconder will be Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. At this time, it's proposed that we move on to agenda item number 4. We have no public meetings scheduled for this evening's council meeting. Further, we have no delegations that have asked for an audience with council this evening. That allows us then to move on to agenda item number 5, reports from departments and key staff. Tonight, we have 5 items emanating from... No, we don't. We have one. Let's turn... Todd, his notes are not good tonight, apparently. We have one item from the CAO's department. We'll get it straight. And I see that Ms. Fraser is with us. This is picking up from last week's discussions pertaining to compensation for the next term of council for councillors. That term, of course, begins next Monday. This is pursuant to a request from council at our last meeting, and the bylaw includes new information about actual dollar figures that are relevant, beginning with the next term of council. So Ms. Fraser is at the podium with us today. Let me turn on your microphone and welcome Ms. Fraser.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Good evening, council. So this report acts as an addendum to Warden Updegrove's council remuneration options that was reviewed with council last Monday, November 7th. So last week, council was leaning towards option 1, and the data has been updated to reflect the 2022 index numbers. So hopefully you've all had an opportunity to look at the proposed numbers. As a result, the council remuneration bylaw has been updated to capture council honorariums to the median results of the report from option 1. So the total updated cost estimate is $27,645. So in summary, I am recommending that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth adopts bylaw 141, 2022, Council Remuneration Bylaw, be introduced, read, and considered, read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Fraser. Fun to read those resolutions, isn't it?
It really is.
All right. Colleagues, questions or first comments on this matter at this time? Councillor Andreessen.
I just want to start with a question, if it's okay through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. How often will this be reviewed? Well, does that have to be in the bylaw, or can it be reviewed like half midterm? Just curious. Thanks.
I do recall in previous reports that there's a recommendation to align it with our market reviews internally. So that's every 4 years with the new council term.
Okay.
However, I believe it's discretionary if you want to have a look at it within that time frame.
Okay, thanks.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions or first comments? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. Good evening, Council. And thanks for the report, Kelly. The question I have is related to the report last week. There was the compensation piece in terms of monetary, which is the option 1, which I certainly agree with. But there was also the other conversations in terms of compensation for cell device, as well as the potential for inclusion of councillors for benefits. Was that going to be incorporated in some way, or are we going to have further discussion about that?
So my apologies. Due to the time constraints, we did want to bypass the council remuneration bylaw, but that is something that can be looked into further to consider. The report that Warden Updegrove provided was data from the AMCTO measures. I think it was 40% and 33% that do offer company benefits. However, there's very limited data from the comparators. There wasn't really any at all. So if you would like, we can look at that in future just to get some aligned data and comparators to see if that is something that we would like to move forward with in future.
Thank you, and thanks, Mayor Todd. It's just a matter that it was in the recommendation from the consultant. I just want to make sure that given that it was in the recommendation, that we ensure that we give it pause. And I'm not certainly suggesting that we do anything quickly in order to somehow go forward without staff research. But just as long as that comes forward to the new council, I'm certainly in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Any other questions or first comments? If councillors are puzzled why I'm struggling with my microphone, it's because Simon changed the number on me, and I'm such a creature of habit that I'm not quite sure which number to press. But we'll get there. All right, Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. When I was going back through my notes and the reports of the previous package last meeting, I really took a look at the number of meetings that we host here at North Perth. So we are on the very top end of the regular council meetings that we host all together. Even in comparison to Guelph, we have 4 more meetings against a large city in the Guelph area. So I'm just wondering also in terms of the additional meetings, because every council has additional and special committee meetings. We're still in the top 5 of those numbers of meetings. I'm just wondering if that could be reviewed. It doesn't have to be reviewed as part of this, but is that something that could be considered in the future in terms of, do we need as many meetings as we have planned? Thanks.
Maybe I'll pick this up because there's a sort of a potential political issue here that between Councillor Rothwell suggesting a few things move forward, and you, it sounds like, have a few things that might move forward as well. Perhaps what we should do is give the next council advice that it strike a limited term subcommittee of this council or the next council to evaluate some of those questions, because I think there are some questions that remain, and it might be useful for a subcommittee of the next council to have a look at that. That might be one way to move that forward. Okay. Ms. Fraser, did you have anything further to add to that?
No, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else with the questions or first comments at this point? Okay, so I have a resolution for consideration then as follows, that bylaw 141-2022, being a bylaw to provide for remuneration and expense reimbursement, including convention expenses payable to members of council, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Behrens, thank you, and Councillor Rothwell will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. We're waiting on one. Councillor Richardson, are you with us? There we go. Okay, and that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ms. Fraser. Next up is item 5.2, reports from the Strategic Initiatives portfolio. Tonight we have no reports brought to this table by our Manager of Strategic Initiatives. We have one item tonight from the Corporate Services Department. In item 5.3.1, Council is asked to finalize matters related to the renovation now completed of the Cargus Municipal Drain. Are there any questions about this? Are we walking through this report? I don't think we need to unnecessarily. Okay, so if council would indulge, then why don't we have the resolution and we can see where that goes. As follows, that bylaw 133-2022, being a bylaw to authorize the maintenance and repair of the Cargus Municipal Drain, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Anstett, thank you, and our seconder will be Councillor Seiler. Any discussion or debate now on this one? Need for any further information? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's move on next to item 5.3.2, which is addressing the matter of appointments of 2 North Perth residents to serve as volunteers on the Perth County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee. On this matter, are there any questions of council? Clerk Klein, do you feel any inclination to speak to this matter?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think it's pretty straightforward. Unless council has questions, I'd be willing to just move forward with the resolution.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, the resolution as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth recommends to Perth County Council that Michael Doan and Vince Judge be appointed to the Perth County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee for the 2022 to 2026 term. I call for a mover on that one. Councillor Andreessen, thank you, and Councillor Johnston will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That moves us forward to item 5.4 on our agenda. This is from the Manager of Programs. There are no reports from that department this evening. Tonight we have two reports on our table from the Facilities Department. For item 5.5.1, I'm going to surrender the chair to Deputy Mayor Kellum as a result of my declared pecuniary interest in this matter. Doug, I'm going to turn your microphone on. There you go. And
Thank you, and for the record, please note that Mayor Kaysenberg has declared pecuniary interest on this. So moving on to item 5.5.1, Manager of Facilities. Jeff, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much for the council. The first report for this evening is with regards to the lease agreement for the Atwood Lions. The Atwood Lions maintain an outdoor skating rink in Atwood for many years. In February of 2021, in the absence of an updated lease agreement and liability insurance, the rink was closed for the season. Over the following months, municipal staff and members of the Atwood Lions executive developed and agreed upon the lease which is attached to this report. The lease was finalized and approved by the Atwood Lions and is brought forward for council's consideration this evening. Staff would also like to make note of the support that we have had with the Atwood Lions and appreciative of their commitment made to this facility and other projects in North Perth.
Thank you, Jeff. Council, any comments or first questions for Jeff? Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for the report. Is this agreement similar to the agreement that we have with the Kinsman for the Kin Station? Is it similar in terms of content and so on?
Yes, much of this lease was developed on the basis of the Kinsman lease.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Ansett, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kellum, through you. And Jeff, I'm sure this is just a typo, but just section 102 of the actual agreement, it has November 14th, 2022, ending on November 13th, 2042. I'm sure that's a typo, but just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just looking for that. Can you tell me the section again, please?
The agreement itself, Article 1, Section 102.
Yes, the term is for 20 years.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's not a typo. That's the agreements for 20 years.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
There's also an option to renew for 2 subsequent terms of 5 years.
Sufficient enough for it, Councillor Ansett? Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, Council, I do have a bylaw in front of me. That bylaw number 138, 2022, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a lease agreement with the Atwood Lions Club, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. moved by Councillor Rothwell, second by Councillor Seiler. Let's activate the vote, please. I'm in favor, it's over there. And that is carried. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Kellum, for stepping in for that matter. Note that as I came in, he had to leave because the next item on the agenda he has declared an interest in. That item is the item related to a change in the purchase price for suite units at Perth Meadows Adult Living Centre. This is item 5.5.2. This approval has been endorsed by the Perth Meadows Adult Living Centre Board. I'll call on our Manager of Facilities, Mr. Jeff Newell, to give us a report. Welcome again, Mr. Newell.
Good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg. The following report is in relation to the Perth Meadows suite purchase price increase. The current purchase price of a suite in the Perth Meadows apartments has not changed since January of 2020. In order to become more reflective of the current housing market and inflation, staff invited a local realtor to recommend a potential increase for the selling price of a unit. On November 2nd, 2022, the Perth Meadows Adult Living Care Residence Committee reviewed the proposed price increase of 10 to 15%. The committee recommended a 15% increase on the purchase price of the suites at Perth Meadows. That would move the price of a one-bedroom suite, which is currently at $153,500, to $176,525. And on the two-bedroom suites, it would be $194,000 is the current price, with the proposed price of $223,100. The report is brought for council for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Questions or first comments from council on this matter? Has an estimate been made of the impact of these changes? Like, can you sort of roll forward and say, okay, what this does is put this much extra money into the budget? Because obviously there's that 5% retained by North Perth from these purchase prices. And how does that influence the budget picture in the 5-year window, for example?
Yes, through you, Mayor Todd, the 15% increase would represent a revenue increase for the municipality of 5% on that 15% increase. In order to determine what the total revenue would be, you would have to look at an average of the number of units that get turned over from year to year. In this past year, we've probably had 3 units that have moved hands or changed hands. But a report or a survey hasn't been done to determine what the total revenue would be. A lot of it would be based on that turnover ratio.
It doesn't sound like it's a very large number that would be augmenting the budget as a result of this change. Is it?
That would be fair to say. It's also, we're facing a number of capital expenses, and in order to try to maintain a healthy budget, we need to look at moving forward with our fee increases. And there's actually some people that reside at Perth Meadows currently that have paid more for their unit a number of years ago than what the current asking price is now. So we felt it was time, or the committee felt it was time to move the price upwards. It hadn't been moved since 2020.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions or comments on this matter? Okay, I have a resolution then for consideration as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves an increase of 15% to the purchase price of suite units at Perth Meadows effective January 1st, 2023, and that bylaw 139-2022 being a bylaw to amend the North Perth Fees and Licenses Bylaw Schedule P, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover, please? Councillor Richardson, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Anstett. Any discussion or debate on this matter? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And Councillor Anstett's doing his good deed in inviting the Deputy Mayor back into the chamber. Thank you for that. Welcome back. All right. Thank you. Next up then is item 5.6. These are reports from the Manager of Environmental Services, and we do not have any reports from that department this evening. Further then, item 5.7, reports from our Manager of Operations, and again, we do not have reports tonight from our Operations Department. I can assure that they're both very busy, and now as we're seeing a little bit of snow, things are going to get more interesting for them. Let's turn to item 5.8 then, reports from the Development and Protective Services Department. As item 5.8.1, Council is invited to consider a contract extension for provided bylaw enforcement services from Tenet Security Group. I'll call on North Perth Manager of Development and Protective Services and Fire Chief Jenny Pape to address this report. Chief Pape, welcome.
Thanks, Mayor Todd. Good evening, Council. Tenet Security Group was hired under contract to provide bylaw enforcement services to North Perth in May of this year. At the time of entering into the agreement, Council requested the renewal of the contract be reviewed 6 months into the agreement. This report is intended to provide information regarding the performance of Tenet Security to date. Since becoming engaged in North Perth, Tenet has responded to a variety of complaints, and a breakdown of the complaints addressed are outlined in the table contained in my report. Tenet has assigned a dedicated bylaw enforcement officer to North Perth to ensure the consistent enforcement across our municipality and to strengthen familiarity within the community. By all accounts, we are receiving very positive feedback from both the public and municipal staff who are engaging with the bylaw enforcement officer. She has been successful in resolving numerous challenging files, some with long histories. And speaking with other jurisdictions, it is evident that recruiting qualified bylaw enforcement officials is incredibly difficult. And in an effort to avoid disruption with the provision of bylaw enforcement services within our community, staff is recommending extending the existing agreement with Tenet. Open to any questions or concerns at this time.
Thank you, Chief Pape. Questions or first comments from Council? Okay, Councillor Richardson, let me just get your microphone here.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Todd, thank you for the report, Chief Pape. I've also heard from residents of the community that some of their, when they've posed a question that needed bylaw interaction, that has been dealt with in a very good manner as compared to how things have been done in the past, so that they're quite happy with the outcome and how things were handled with that. So I will endorse this. Just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Anyone else with comments or questions? Okay. Can I ask why we think 3 years is wise at this point in time?
Those honest, just that was what was submitted originally by Tenet. That's the standard agreement that they use with other jurisdictions. So that was the term that they had included in the original agreement.
Okay, I find myself a little bit concerned about that one. I think that the length is a little longer than I would prefer to see. I acknowledge that we know there's trouble in the landscape in terms of finding qualified bylaw enforcement officials, but I think 3 years feels a little long to me. So just putting that on the table as something for potential comment or discussion. Do you think there would be a change in the contract value if we went from 3 years to 2 years?
I think that is a risk. Tenet has invested in our community. They're certainly visible. They purchased a vehicle so that they could be here and visible. They have been very open and receptive to our change in ask. Originally, we contracted with them for a 3-day-a-week sort of arrangement. When we recognized that the volume of complaints was too much to be dealt with in that window of time, they immediately very responsive and did have capacity, thankfully, to fill that gap for us. Our full-time bylaw enforcement officer does remain off on leave and is not expected to return until at least March. So we are dependent right now on tenant for bylaw security.
Okay, anyone else with questions or comments? CL, are you scratching your, okay, let me find the right, your microphone is number 13? 13? Okay, go ahead.
So just to add to Chief Pape has mentioned too, there is also a notification and a termination clause in the contract. So if conditions were to change in the environment in that 3 years, there is a way the municipality could alter their plans.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions or first comments? Okay, seeing none, I have a resolution as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth authorizes staff to extend the agreement with Tenant Security Group for the provision of bylaw enforcement services for a term of 3 years. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Seiler, thank you. Councillor Rothwell is our seconder. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. As item 5.8.2, Council is provided with a report requested recently by resolution on the subject of the use of green flashing lights on the vehicles of our volunteer firefighters who respond to emergencies to which they've been called. Again, I see that Chief Pape is standing in front of me. We welcome her back to the podium. Let me just get the right camera view here. And welcome, Chief Pape. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Todd. So this report, as Mayor Kasenberg mentioned, has been prepared in response to Council's request for a staff report on marketing strategies and benchmarking amongst neighbouring municipalities with respect to the use of green flashing lights by volunteer firefighters responding to emergencies. For many years, the North Perth Fire Department has made the public aware of the use of green flashing lights by its volunteer firefighters responding to the fire station in the event of emergency. Notices have been included in tax bills, the Community Connection, and the Spring and Summer Guide. The NPFD also uses social media platforms to educate the public on this topic. It is important to note that the use of a green light is for courtesy only. Firefighters are responsible to follow the rules of the road even when responding to emergencies. A green flashing light does not give them any more privilege than any other motorist on the road. For the purposes of preparing this report, staff did consult with a number of neighbouring municipalities, and those included the Township of Mapleton, the Town of Minto, the Municipality of West Perth, the Township of Perth East, the Town of St. Mary's, and the Municipality of Huron East. All jurisdictions that I consulted with are using the same sorts of strategies as we are. They're using print media, mail-outs, the same as we are. 5 of the 6 municipalities that I reached out to did report the use of green light awareness signs within their jurisdictions. However, despite those efforts, anecdotally, each municipality reported they continue to have the same problem. And this is an issue across the province. The Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs has discussed this for years using various outlets. The AMCTO has discussed it as well. It's not a North Perth issue. I did reach out to the Ministry of Transportation twice to prepare this report. However, they have not responded yet. It is our understanding that we would be required to have their authorization to install any signs on Road 164 or Highway 23, which is where we do receive the bulk of our complaints. I did include the cost of the signs in the report, but that does not include the permitting costs that I understand could be that's a potential cost to the MTO. Any questions or?
Thank you, Chief Pape. Any questions or first comments from Council? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you again. It's unfortunate, and from some of us who are currently serving on council, we have the experience ourselves of having both the green light and the red ones. And it's incredibly unfortunate that people aren't near as courteous even for ambulance and fire trucks and police. So I'm okay with trying to bring as much awareness to it as possibly can to do that. To be respectful of people trying to report to an emergency, to get to the fire hall and to get out. It could be their neighbor, it could be someone, so just, and it might be very, obviously I'm full support of this, but I'm just wondering if there'd be an opportunity now that we have the new radio station in town. I'm sure we would do that, and I don't know, it might be a little prohibitive to do a PSA possibly on the ranch because it is local. Might get to more people than if they don't happen to follow us on Twitter or Facebook, but if they're listening to that, and possibly 1017 in Wingham too, because I'm sure they're having the same issues as well for all local fire departments. Maybe a different avenue for media to do that, but with that, I'm assuming they would come costs, but I think it would be certainly important for reminding everyone of how important it is to provide that courtesy to our emergency services. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, if I might. I have recently heard Minto is advertising. Minto and Wellington North have both taken out radio spots. I have heard that. I have also looked back in our history on this. We do have a file at the Listowel station, and we have used radio in the past as well. It seems those who want to know the information are interested, pull over and are courteous. There's others who choose not to. I do believe there are some who really don't see them. I have had others, including my mother, tell me that she hasn't seen the light until it's right there. So I do believe that could be a factor as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions at this point? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So at this point, the reports for information, the resolution as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received the report, Use of Green Flashing Lights Volunteer Firefighters, for information. Can I call for a mover? Deputy Mayor Kellum, thank you. And Councillor Richardson will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on that one? I think it would be appropriate to Councillor Richardson's comments that that the hint is dropped that perhaps for the 2023 budget you could put a small communications amount in at your discretion for appropriate use. But we'll leave that off the table at this point. On the table is the report for information. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you, Chief Pape. Next up is item 5.8.3. Council is invited to consider a contract renewal with the town of Minto for fire protection services that Minto provides in what generally is considered northern environs of Wallace Ward. I'll call on North Perth Manager of Development and Protective Services and Fire Chief Jenny Pape to address this one as well.
Thanks,
Floor
Mayor
yours.
Todd.
Yeah.
For many years, North Perth Fire Department has received fire protection services from the town of Minto under fire protection agreement. The current 7-year agreement is set to expire at the end of this year. The agreement ensures that North Perth residents living within the fire protection area receive timely response in the event of an emergency. The existing agreement has served both North Perth and the town of Minto well for a number of years. Staff recommends renewing this agreement for a further 7-year term.
Thank you, Chief Pape. Any questions or first comments on this one? All right, I have a resolution for consideration. Oh, I have one over here. Sorry, Councillor Hanstead.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Through you. Thank you, Chief Pape, for the report. And I know it's not mentioned in here. I don't have an issue with this. I'm just wondering if you could briefly speak to our other agreements when they're expiring, if they're coming up in the near future. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. So earlier in the year, we did renew the fire protection agreement. In that case, we provide fire protection services into West Perth. And so the agreement is almost identical. We basically take the jurisdictions, we change the names. So that agreement is almost identical. And it's renewed on the same time frame. other fire protection agreements that we have, mostly mutual aid. So meaning that we do have council's authority to leave North Perth on a reciprocal basis. So if one of our neighboring municipalities needs our assistance, they are supposed to exhaust their own resources first, and then they can call on us for assistance, and we can give and receive, and we do that into Wellington and Perth County.
Thank you. Any other questions or first comments? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and through you, thanks, Chief Pape, for the report. I just want to draw your attention, item on page 70, it's on the reimbursement clause 3A. I'm just not sure if that reads correctly, and North Perth agrees to reimburse North Perth. I just...
No. Thank you for catching that.
That's all. That's right. I probably should have let you know beforehand. I saw it and I just made a note and I didn't do that. But if that's can be clarified, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate catching that.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Anyone else at this point before we consider the resolution? So noted that there will be a change in the contractual language per Councillor Rothwell's good catch. I have a resolution as follows, that bylaw number 140-2022, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement with the town of Minto, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Richardson will move, and Councillor Behrens will be our seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Pape. 3 items up, 3 items down. All right, let's move on to item 5.8.4. Now we're turning to our development friends. And council receives an application for consent to sever in the Wallace ward brought forward by party Glenn and Hartung. Ooh, I gotta find my tongue tonight, I think. Through an agent, James Burns. The intent is to create 2 farm parcels from 1 in lands currently zoned agricultural. We are asked to make a recommendation to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate. And John Bice, a planner with the County of Perth who works on North Perth files, is with us tonight to speak to the application via web conference. Welcome, Planner Bice.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg, Council. I'm just going to quick share my screen. Just double checking that everyone can see that.
We can see that.
Perfect. Right, so the subject lands are located at 5221 line 88 in the Wallace Ward, part lots 7, 8, and 9, concession 4, in the municipality of North Perth. I believe I'm sharing the wrong application here. This one is for surplus farm dwelling. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so this application, it's the same location as the one that's coming up next. So it's for an agricultural severance, again located at 5221 line 18 or line 88. So the Hartungs currently own both the proposed severed and retained parcels here. They also own their home farm, which is located at 8569 Road 146. The Hartungs have applied to sever a 30.6 hectare parcel and retain 31.1 hectares at 5221 line 88. Both the severed and retained lands will continue to be used for agricultural purposes. So the severed parcel, it includes a barn for storage purposes, a row of grain elevators, agricultural lands, woodlands, large Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, regulated section of an unevaluated floodplain, and a wellhead protection area. Just a side note that the dwelling and accessory structures on the severed parcel will be discussed right after this application for surplus farm dwelling severance. That file number is B33-22, whereas this file number is B3222. So the Perth County official plan, it allows for the creation of new farm lots, provided that farming is the intended use for both the severed and retained parcels, which is the case here. It also provided that the minimum lot area and lot frontage requirements in the North Perth zoning bylaw are met, and those two requirements are met here. Just as a side note there, the required lot area for the agricultural zone in the North Perth zoning bylaw is 30 hectares or 75 acres, and the required lot frontage being 225 meters. There are no MDS concerns with either the severed or retained parcels. The barn that you can see on the retained parcel B32-22 on the left side of the screen. So that barn is over 750 meters away from the surplus farm dwelling severance. And the land to be severed will also be rezoned as a condition of consent. That is the surplus farm dwelling retained land, not the farm split retained land. So this will preclude any residential dwellings to be permitted within that 750 meter distance from the barn, located on this application, which is B32-22. There are no MDS concerns, either with severed or retained parcels, as previously stated, and council is Perth County, the planning department here is recommending the North Perth recommend to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate to approve the application. I can take any questions now as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bice. Colleagues, questions or first comments on this matter? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I have a resolution as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the report entitled B32-22 Hartung Consent, submitted by James Burns on behalf of Glenn and Irma Hartung, affecting lands described as Part Lots 7, 8, and 9, Concession 4, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 5221, line 88. And that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth recommend that the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate approve the application for consent to sever, number B32-22, submitted by James Burns on behalf of Glenn and Irma Hartung, affecting the lands described as Part Lots 7, 8, and 9, Concession 4, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 5221, line 88, subject to the following conditions. The North Perth conditions are listed in the resolution. There are 5. I seek Council's consent not to read those as has become my more recent practice. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Richardson, thank you. And a seconder will be Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate? Not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And we're missing one. There it is. Thank you. And with that, that is carried. Thank you. Let's move forward then. Mr. Bice, Same property, slightly different purpose, but we welcome you back to the table. This again with party Glenn and Irma Hartung through their agent James Burns. Here the goal is to sever surplus farm residents from retained lands that will remain in agricultural use. And I'll ask you to catch us up on this one, Mr. Bice.
Thank you, Mayor Kaseberg and Council again. Like the mayor has said, the property is none changed here as the previous application, only the purpose has changed. So this application will be then for surplus farm dwelling severance, as previously stated, and it's located at 5221 line 88. So the Hartungs have applied to sever 6,150 meters squared or about 1.52 acre parcel and retain a 30.6 hectare, 75.6 acre parcel at 5221 line 88. As you can see, the retained parcels on the left there and the severed will be on the right. So the severed and retained parcels will need to be rezoned as a condition of surplus farm dwelling severance. The area in red, the retained lands, will be rezoned A62 special to ensure no residential dwellings or mobile homes can be placed on the retained farmland. The special that I'm referring to will be for a reduced interior side yard setback for a grain bin. So here's an image taken on September 19th, and it's an image of the surplus farm dwelling. The farm dwelling is currently inhabited and will continue to be so after the severance is completed with subsequent zoning bylaw amendment. And according to the North Perth Deputy CBO, the SFD of surplus farm dwellings was built in approximately 1890. The applicant has demonstrated that they own 2 farms, each with a house, and they have indicated that this current dwelling is not needed for their farming operation. So this image was taken looking to the north, near the southern edge of the surplus farm dwelling proposal. It's taken looking at the field and the associated drive shed that is located along the southern portion of the property. The severed lot again is 1.52 acres at 6,150 meters squared and includes a single attached dwelling, septic system, well, garage, and accessory uses that are residential. So the additional item would be that there is a barn that is proposed to remain for storage purposes on the retained agricultural parcel, and it is recommended that a change of use permit for this barn be added as a condition of consent, and this would be to prohibit livestock operations or facilities. There's a row of grain bins that will also remain on the agricultural operation, and here's an image looking to the north along the southern edge of the retained, or the northern edge of the retained parcel, southern edge of the surplus farm dwelling. This metal-clad shed will also remain, but it will remain on the severed lands as it has been deemed accessory to the residential use. One little note to make, a bit of a small modification to the report that you likely have in front of you is that an additional condition, number 11, has been added, and this condition will remove the gravel lane that currently connects the severed and retained parcels. It is also an additional condition of consent that the retained lands obtain an ulterior access so that they can continue to use the grain silos and barn for the agricultural purposes or storage purposes. And again, that change of use permit will be in. And I can take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bice. Questions or first comments from council? Mr. Bice, just quickly, I'm looking at the documentation in front of me. I have 10 conditions that are North Perth conditions. Can you confirm that it's 10 or 11?
I have it just right in front of me here, and I can confirm that it is. I believe 10.
Okay,
So
thank you.
it's made its way where it should have. So that's great.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to make sure, right? Okay, Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, I just have a question. How common is it that a barn is kept on a severed property and used for storage? Is that fairly common?
Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, the applications that I've been working with and my colleagues have been working with here at Perth County, we've seen quite a few instances where the barn has been deemed accessory to the residential use. But in doing so, we make sure that a condition of surplus farm dwelling severance be that a change of use permit be acquired to make sure that no livestock be permitted in those barns. I would say in the past few applications that I've had, this is certainly not the only one that a barn has remained. And again, we want to reduce, or not reduce, but prohibit the livestock operation. And in doing so, we do through consent, or condition of consent. So I hope that answers your question, and I can elaborate further if need be.
Okay, anything else from council? All right, I have a resolution as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the report entitled B33-22, Hartung Consent, submitted by James Burns on behalf of Glenn and Irma Hartung, affecting lands described as part lots 7, 8, and 9, concession 4, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 5221 line 88. And that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth recommends to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate approve the application for consent to sever number B33-22, submitted by James Burns on behalf of Glenn and Irma Hartung, affecting the lands described as part lots 7, 8, and 9, concession 4, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 5221 line 88, subject to the following conditions, and Mr. Bice and I have confirmed there are 10. I'm hoping that council has seen all 10 of them. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Seiler will move that, and our seconder will be Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Johnston. Let me just get your microphone here. Go ahead.
So in the one drawing that we have where it's the red is the to be retained and the yellow portion is the severed, the grain bins are within the severed. It looks like the grain bins go with the house. I just want to make sure that they are remaining on the farm property. Just by the drawings that we have, it looks like they're going with the house.
Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Yeah, so originally, that's a good catch. Great comment. Originally, the applicants came forth with a sketch survey that included the grain bins in the severed portion. So the severed portion being the surplus farm dwelling severance. So the severed portion, yes. And in discussions with the applicants and the owners, we've, as a department, have deemed those grain bins as not being accessory to a residential use, and they are accessory to an agricultural use instead. So in discussions with the applicant, some modifications were made, and in doing so, those grain bins are now on the retained lands within the agricultural retained parcel and not on the surplus farm dwelling.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions? Is that a hand up or Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. I was debating whether I was going to say, but on page 104 of our agenda package, the survey plan does show the grain bins are excluded. So it's just a matter then, if I'm correct, John Weiss, that the report photo just wasn't updated from the original. Is that correct?
Through Mayor Kaysenberg, that's correct, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? I think we have this duly moved and seconded, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's move forward to item 5.8.6. In this item, council is invited to exempt from park lot control lands designated as residential in the Listowel ward on Malcolm Crescent. The usual purpose of such an action is to allow adjustment of lot lines between residential parcels. County of Perth Planner Jerica Gilbert is with us to present an overview of this action. Welcome, Planner Gilbert.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have promised the clerk that I won't yell tonight into the microphone, but I get easily excitable, so we'll see how that goes. So thank you. This is application 10-22, exemption from part lot control. We've had a couple of these this fall. As you remember, exemption from part lot control is an application that developers can request from council to pass a bylaw as according to section 50.7 of the Planning Act, which basically lifts part lot control of section 50.5 to allow lot lines to be placed on the property. These bylaws have an expiration date. For this one tonight, we are proposing a year. The location is off of Malcolm Crescent. This was known as the Terrier subdivision back in the day. Oh, I was promised a clicker with power. There we go. So there were 3 parts proposed. Part 1 and Part 2 contain an existing street townhouse development. Normally, street townhouses aren't permitted in the R4 zone, but there is a site-specific zoning on this subdivision that allows in the residential R4 zone for street townhouses. They're just subject to the provisions of the R5 zone. So there will be 3 units of the 6-unit townhouses will be on Part 1 and Part 2. And then the applicant is currently in the process of site plan approval for a 4-plex on Part 3. So there's Part 1 and Part 2. Part 3. And this is the existing townhouses. And to give you an idea of what they'll look like when they're done, this was the street townhouses that were approved earlier this year as part of Block 2. Planning is supporting this application at this time, so upon approval by yourselves of the bylaw, it will go to the delegated authority for review. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you very much.
Thanks. I think your microphone volume was just fine tonight.
Good.
All right, let's turn to council. Questions or first comments? Councillor Rothwell?
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Jerica, for the report. Can you go into a bit more detail on Part 3, being the proposed stacked 4-plex, and how the part lot control is going to affect that property?
Yes, this one has been interesting, especially because initially there was, we had to kind of open an investigation on whether or not there was split zoning on this property, just because a Parks and Recreation zone was thought to come up. And there was also questions of whether or not the fourplex met the lot frontage requirements. Initially, when the applicant submitted it, they thought they required a minor variance. And of course, we can't pass an application for part lot control that doesn't conform to the zoning, which we saw earlier with Reed's Heritage Homes. They applied for it beforehand. However, what ended up happening is they weren't measuring the lot frontage correctly for the curve. The fourplex isn't in development yet just because you can't have the fourplex on with the street townhouses, if that makes sense.
So just further then, so the part lot control is only to create part 3 then, is that correct? It's not creating individual lots for the stacked fourplex, is that correct?
That is correct.
Fair enough, good, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we have 2 items associated with this one as follows. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the application for 2459828 Ontario Inc. for the exemption of part lot control on lands described as Plan 44M81 Block 3, Malcolm Crescent, List to Award, Municipality of North Perth, and forward the part lot exemption bylaw 142-2022 to the County of Perth for approval. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Rothwell and Councillor Anstead. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that one is carried. And now the bylaw, the enabling resolution as follows, that bylaw number 142-2022 being a bylaw to exempt from part lot control Block 3, Plan 44M81, Malcolm Crescent List Award in the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on that one? Councillor Richardson, thank you. Councillor Barons is our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Thank you for being with us, Planner Gilbert. All right, we can move on to item 6 on our agenda this evening. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or of our committees at this time? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. In the news of late is information that the province of Ontario is introducing legislation through a bill called the Build More Homes Faster Act. There's a comment period, I believe, of 30 days. The bill is wide-ranging, and in fact, to the point where in discussions with some of our staff, our CEO Snell, the Planning Act requirements as well as development charges are being the overreach is that the municipalities then are not entitled to collect the full amount of eligible development charges. I would like, if council agrees, a report to outline issues of concern that this municipality should perhaps be letting the province know of concerns that we have in terms of the proposed legislation.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Certainly it's been much on my mind, that piece of legislation as well. CAO Snell, do we know what the runway is on that one in terms of response to the province's call for input?
I don't have the exact date with me tonight, but it's interesting as we sat here, I've got more updates from some of our firms that we consult with on planning and development charge issues. So certainly there's still much discussion and dismantling of the legislation, but certainly staff can prepare some information and bring back a report, including the deadline to submit.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just sort of as an additional comment, I've noted that AMO has released some information about this, some of their concerns, but it doesn't seem very comprehensive yet. I think that everyone's trying to catch up and figure out what the implications are, and some of that is because regulations haven't been posted or drafted that will enable some of that. So there seems to be a little bit of a gap of knowledge, but a rush forward with this. Councillor Rothwell?
Yeah, thanks. Not to go on too much further, but the concern I always have is that when the province allows time to respond and puts a time limit of 30 days on, the clock starts ticking pretty quick when you haven't got the information really to give a fulsome review. So with the comments from CAO Snell, I appreciate if council agrees that we would be anticipating a report on that. Thank you.
Thanks. And maybe I can ask a question of Planner Gilbert while here. Is the county starting to look, the planning department of the county starting to look at the implications of the legislation that Councillor Rothwell has spoken of?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to speak on behalf of my department. These changes are coming very quickly, and we're basically trying to stay on top of what the implications might be for this bill, let alone we were still getting used to the implications of Bill 108 and 109. It looks as though the commenting period for the on the Environmental Registry and the Ontario Regulatory Registry is November 24th, so coming up soon. If any councillors are passionate about this issue, I do think the ramifications for our municipalities in Ontario are going to be huge.
Thank you. I think I just advise that, of course, we have our inaugural council meeting of the new term next Monday. There is nothing planted on the agenda to receive any reports, and so we're kind of in an odd position in that even if we requested a report, it would come back to this council for review, if that was council's wish, after the window that seems to be set by the province based on what Planner Gilbert has told us. So I'm not sure how to proceed. I mean, I'm still willing to entertain a motion if you want to move it, but you appreciate that we're still likely to miss the runway, or the report will be submitted on our behalf without council's review. Councillor Rothwell, did you want to comment?
Thanks, Mayor Todd. It's a bit of a conundrum, isn't it? Nevertheless, I think if staff can do research, if council agrees, and prepare issues of concern, my understanding is that those comments through our CAO could be submitted on the municipality's behalf, with the proviso that council may have additional comments it wishes to make thereafter. If council is satisfied with that, and if CAO Snell is in agreement, I think that could resolve the issue of concern.
Thank you. CAO Snell, any comments about both capacity and this approach?
Yeah, certainly as expressed by Planner Gilbert, it's changing rapidly, and we are still collecting information, but I still think we can make some comments before the deadline, with the reprisal that we may make additional comments if new information is gathered. I think one of the difficulties is some of the stuff is in the regulations that are yet to be seen by the municipalities, which is often frustrating. But we can certainly make our comments on some of the things we know about today that are certainly of concern.
Okay, so if we were to proceed, then I think we're directing staff to prepare comments relevant to North Perth circumstances as we understand them, and to submit those on our behalf with a provision noting that this council, the future council actually, will review and reserves the right to send additional comments. Not that the province is going to take them, but we might as well at least allow for the possibility, right? Clerk Klein, there was something of emotion in there, I think. I'm hoping you got the gist of that. And with regards to staff submitting something, CAO Snell, do you think that that we have the corporate capacity for staff to submit something to this consultation by November 24th? Yes, I'm seeing a nod of a head, so I'll confirm that we have that. All right, so I'm going to consider that moved by Councillor Rothwell to the effect we're going to rely on the clerk to make sure it makes sense, and seconded by Councillor Johnston. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this matter? Seeing none, we count on our highly talented deputy clerk to pull this off as a vote. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. And I suspect she's going to quote me at her performance review about that highly talented part. So, okay. Any other report requests from council at this hour? All right, let's move forward then to item 7. We have received no additional items of correspondence beyond that already shared in the consent agenda for council-specific disposition. Let us turn then to the consideration of bylaws that have been recommended tonight for action. For item 8.1, council is asked to authorize the promulgation of an agreement with Party Stolt related to temporary mobile home establishment and occupancy in advance of what I believe is construction of a new residence. Any questions before we consider this matter? Enabling a resolution as follows, that bylaw number 132-2022 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a mobile home agreement with Karen Stolt and Lindsay Stolt be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, thank you, and Councillor Anstedt. Any discussion or debate on that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And it did not come up for me. There it is. Okay. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up then, as item 8.2, council is asked to provide for a drainage works, namely the Turnbull Municipal Drain. Any questions before we consider this matter? This is finalizing the bill. That's what it's doing. All right, I have a resolution then for our consideration as follows. That bylaw number 60-2022 being a bylaw to provide drainage works, Turnbull Municipal Drain, be introduced, read, and considered read a third time and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Rothwell, thank you. And our seconder will be Councillor Johnston. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Item 8.3 as follows, that bylaw number 78-2022 being a bylaw to provide drainage works Henderson Municipal Drain be introduced, read, and considered read a third time and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Anstedt, thank you. And our seconder will be Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Now on to the Mayberry Hartung Drain. Same purpose, that bylaw number 86-2022 being a bylaw to provide drainage works Mayberry Hartung Municipal Drain be introduced, read, and considered read a third time and be finally passed. And the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on this one? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kellum, and Councillor Seiler will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this one?
Very good.
Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And now we are at item 8.5. And this is like a 4-verse song. I think that's what we're doing tonight. And the resolution is as follows, that bylaw number 105-2022 being a bylaw to provide drainage works the Steenbergen Municipal Drain be introduced, read, and considered read a third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson is going to be our mover, and Councillor Barron will be our seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? See none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. I can't help but comment, this term of council has seen a lot of drains attended to, and I guess we might say we're just going with that flow tonight. Sorry. Had to end the term with a groan, right? All right, we're now at item 9 on our agenda. Are there any councillors wishing leave to give notice of motion this evening? Seeing none, that brings us to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, as we close this term of council, I felt it important to offer our retiring colleagues some recognition for their lengthy service and outstanding commitment to North Perth, and even, and I'm trying not to be hit by flying objects here, its predecessors. Both Councillor and former Mayor Julie Barnes and Councillor Terry Seiler have been engaged for a rather long time in the community's activities and interests, and I'm sure that will continue in just new and different ways. They have both served with great distinction. First, we're going to talk about Councillor Seiler. We'll pick on Councillor Seiler first. Councillor Seiler was first elected to council in the year 2000 as a representative of the Listowel ward. He was a volunteer firefighter for 25 years in North Perth prior to becoming involved with the council, and he has served on a number of boards and committees, including the Listowel Daycare Centre, Economic Development, Recreation Advisory Committee, the Cemetery Board, the Listowel BIA, the Cemetery Board as a citizen, I understand, for a period of time, the BIA again, the Cemetery Board, and this current term he has served with distinction on the Cemetery Board, the Perth Adult Life Care Residences Committee, and the Court of Revision. It's a pretty ambitious resume, and we're grateful for the service. I've invited his colleague at Council, Councillor Matt Richardson, to say a few words about Councillor Seiler and his service and reminisce a little bit about the experiences. Councillor Richardson, let me find your microphone.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so. Councillor Seiler, I've known you for, that sounded a lot more terse than actually what it's going to be, but I've known you for an awful lot of years, served with you on council, served with you on the fire department, and I've known you personally for years. Always a man of stature, always willing to share a laugh, always been a great friend, and to say that your service has been nothing but exemplary in all the facets that you've done as for this great community. North Perth is certainly better off to have you in it, and hope to carry things forward. Obviously our friendship will, outside of these chambers, but you certainly will be missed. I don't know an awful lot more to say. He's just going to be missed, and he's all-around good fellow. Never had the courtesy, like Councillor Johnson, of actually having you come pick up milk, but that's one day I have bumped into you in the Zares. That's one thing I can say. But just like to say, it's been nothing short of a privilege for knowing you and your family, for everything that we've served on together. And thank you so much, and you're a credit to Listowel.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. You have to put up with a little bit from me now too, Terry. I'll begin with a brief tribute to Councillor Terry Seiler. I first met Terry when I was knocking on doors in Listowel during my first mayoral election campaign. He was kind, and on that occasion he had lots of advice as we stood in the driveway for 20-25 minutes and talked. I have often thought of Terry as the encyclopedia of North Perth infrastructure. And certainly during my term, I would imagine, and I would imagine in earlier terms, and Julie might be able to confirm, he has kept a close eye on the real fundamentals of municipal governance. Because Terry knows that to be effective as a community and to be a successful elected official, we must We need to have safe, sound roads and infrastructure. Terry was a person I turned to when considering the politics of our infrastructure as well. I often would have chats with him. He and I have shared fascinating conversations about things like traffic circle value, the downtown one-way pilot, the turning radius needs of trucks, and quite a few other topics. I shall miss Terry's input at Council on Infrastructure and his warmth and kindnesses to me and to many in our community. To Terry's family, Debbie, his wife, and his children, we offer deep thanks for sharing this strong, community-minded man with our community for so long. Terry, thank you. You know what comes next. It's your turn.
Well, it's been quite a journey, like you say. I think that I was elected back in 2000, and we had a lot of projects that we worked on, and I think that I can remember our first big project was our number one drain. It was Carl Armstrong was our public works manager then, and when we got that drain in, for you don't know, it starts up by the egg hole there and it runs down through John Rosa Street into the river, and that got the ball rolling for Wallace South. There's nothing back in Wallace South back when we put that drain in, and then that kind of opened up the floodgates for the municipality. And by doing that, I guess I'm proud of the industrial park that we put back there. A lot of the councils and staff have worked very hard with the industrial park. Our fire service has been amazing. It's come a long way with their 2 new departments and all the great volunteer firefighters and the training that they get. It's unbelievable. Our new arena was another good project. I'm very happy with our new arena, and it's very nice to visit the place. And there's been a lot of hard volunteer work and from everybody and getting it put there. I guess our entrance signs was a BIA project that we worked on. We got red funding for that. It was great. It shows what kind of a municipality we live in. I think it's the one of the best signs that I've seen in the area. And I guess another thing that we worked on is the sale or the buying of our schools and the sale of our schools. It all worked out great. They're all being used proper now, and you know what, the way the town's growing, and it's a good thing we kept them in the schools because we need them. So anyhow, I just want to touch on my 2 terms in county council. My colleague Councillor Behrens kind of took me under her wing and guided me down there, and I always look forward to our last meeting in December. She always took me Christmas shopping at Klomps. I think it's Klomps. We always went out to Klomps and to her favorite store, and I'll never forget that because every time I see the advertisement, I always think of Julie. And it's been great. It's just been great working with all the councils. That I've worked with different councils and all the different staffs. You know, it's been a great team that from my last 20 years that I've been around, and I've learned a lot from everybody and what have you. And I guess I want to thank all the ratepayers for their support. A lot of good chats in the milk house. Learned quite a bit. And last of all, I want to thank my family, my wife Debbie, Nick, and Becky, Kate, and Lenny. Couldn't have done it without them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seiler. Next, we turn our attention to a very lengthy, successful career in elected politics in North Perth, in Wallace Township, and a legacy of profound impact in our community. I have a list of this that is, I'm going to read into the record, but it's important for us to reflect on the significant contributions of Councillor and former Mayor Julie Beirnes. She was elected to Wallace Township Council, I believe, for the first time in 1994. And in that term, fairly rapidly was thrust into the Joint Transition Committee for the amalgamation of Wallace Township, Elma Township, and the town of Listowel to formulate North Perth. And she was sharing some more stories about that with me recently. From 1998 to 2003, she was a councillor representing Wallace Ward on the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. From 2000 to 2018, 18 years she served as a councillor at Perth County table. From 2003 to 2010, she served as deputy mayor in the municipality of North Perth and was the first woman to achieve that success. From 2009, 2010, and 2011, she served as the warden of Perth County. She was only the fourth woman to serve in that capacity, and her service longevity is longer than the other three combined. From 2010 to 2018, Julie served as mayor of the municipality of North Perth and was this community's first woman mayor. From 2018 to 2022, she served as a councillor in Wallace Ward, this current term of council on our council. She has served on the following boards. Most of these are external, I'll point out, because I think she served on virtually every internal committee over time. So the following boards: she served on the North Perth Planning Committee, the Perth County Planning Advisory Committee, Listowel Memorial Hospital Board, Palmerston District Hospital Board, Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, both as a board member, and she served as vice chair for a period of the Perth District Health Unit. She has served on the North Perth Police Services Board. She has served on the Physicians Recruitment Committee, the Perth County Municipal Liaison Committee, Oswald Bayfield Maitland Valley Source Protection Authority, and on the Middle Maitland Rejuvenation Committee. As I said, many, many other committees that Julie has served on in what has been a very lengthy and successful stretch of service to our community. I have called on someone who is a friend of hers, who has served with her for a fairly long time, Deputy Mayor Kellum, to say a few words at this hour. Deputy Mayor Kellum, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. So 17 years ago, I retired from the North Perth Fire Department, and that's when Councillor Seiler said, you should get into politics with me. You're too young to stop giving back to the community. You would enjoy it. After several discussions and blessings from my family, I decided to do just that. 16 years ago, I was acclaimed as councillor for the Listowel Ward, and that's where I met Julie Beirnes. My father-in-law, Mary McCracken, served with her on Wallace Township Council for years. I asked about Julie, and he said, she's a well-respected lady who is passionate about her community. That's all I needed to hear. I got to know Julie very quickly. She always had an open door policy, listened, and made reasonable decisions whenever I asked her a question or for advice. A leader for me and a mentor forever. Yes, we had our opportunities and challenges over the years, as all municipalities have. But when a decision was made, we moved on. Julie and Terry, it's been a pleasure working with both of you, and know the time you've committed to your political life will now be transferred and truly enjoyed in your personal family life. Congratulations, and thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I get the almost last word here. Actually, Julie gets the last word here, but let me say a few as well. I want to offer what can only be an inadequate tribute to Councillor and former Mayor Julie Beirnes. Julie has been in service to both North Perth and in her home community when it was a township, the township of Wallace, for many years. When she got involved, she was still a young mom, and the sacrifice that is engaged by those who serve in municipal elected office is only compounded for women with children at home. Julie has been an inspiration to so many, with many years leading meetings as deputy mayor and then mayor, as warden of Perth County. She is the longest serving female warden, as I alluded to already, in this county. She is a great role model and a strong advocate for women. I hail her voice, and I shall miss it at this table next term, even in those moments where she and I disagreed. It was a challenge for me to follow her as mayor of this community, given her deep connections and insight into the issues and history of our North Perth. While we were not well acquainted at the time of my election this term, and I think that likely caused her some anxiety about the new and generally unknown person coming into the mayorship, I have enjoyed collaborating with her and her mentorship and kind advice. She led through what can only be described as one of the saddest periods of our collective community life, the downtown fire that took the lives of 2 of our firefighters. I reflect upon that period of service and many more unsung moments of her compassionate engagement with great admiration. It was a rare moment of great surprise and pride to be one of the few in-person witnesses to her being given last week the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award by MP John Mader. And I could feel her deep appreciation for such recognition. I only hope she felt my deep mix of excitement and appreciation for her then as I feel it now. I extend thanks to Julie's patient husband, Lauren, and to her children and grandchildren who have shared her with this community for so long. This community has had many who have risen to the occasion of great service on its behalf. I suggest tonight that on the honor roll of that service and amongst the best and brightest who have served and rendered such service is Julie Behrens. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you to Doug and Todd, both of you, for your comments. Last week it was a real treasure. When you come on to council, you have to swear an oath, and for 28 years I swore that oath to Queen Elizabeth II, who I considered a role model for women out there everywhere. So it was a real honor to get the platinum pin. 4 years as Wallace, 24 years as North Perth, and 18 of those spent at the county. And Terry, I do remember the rides down. We solved all of the problems, and if we didn't, we solved them on the way back. The opportunity that is given to council members to work with our MPPs, our MPs, our exceptionally talented staff, an array of council colleagues, inspiring community organizations and individuals. We have such dynamic volunteers and charities within our boundaries, and again, amazing role models. But most of all, just to be in service to your community. I was there at amalgamation, very first term on council, didn't even really know how the township worked, and you're thrown into amalgamation talks. And this is what I always held true and fast for me. The prospect of building a community we all want to live in, guided by the personal characteristics of the kind of person you want living in that community. When you bring the sincerest intent to work together for the betterment of your community, all things are possible. I often have been told that council in its whole can be a little bit intimidating, And actually, just last week at the Egg Society Gala, I was told that. And my response is always usually pretty close to this. Council members, by their very nature, they work here, they operate a business here, and they raise a family here. And to all of our citizens, always try to remember, they're just people that live here too. From contentious topics, I wish I would have tracked the number of meetings I attended, to the challenges and credible opportunities. I will always look back with fondness on the people I have met, worked with, debated with, and developed lasting friendships with. Certainly thank you to my family for their encouragement and their indulgence. You can imagine over such a time frame and some of those contentious meetings, they just didn't always get the best of me. In my municipal adventure, my name appears on, a multitude of documents, a few buildings and a couple bridges. We seem to feel the need to do that. But sincerely, one of the best places it ever appeared was on that 1994 ballot. My heart is overwhelmed with gratitude. Thanks to each and every one of you for the memories. It truly has been an unforgettable privilege to be in service to this community. Thank you.
Congratulations to both of you. I think when Doug said that, I was like, yes, that's actually a really important point. Congratulations on your service and the opportunities that you have in your next adventures, whatever they may be. Okay, for item 10.2 then, this is our opportunity generally for announcements that would be of benefit to the community. The clerk and I conferred just before this meeting about this opportunity as well, and we determined that there is an opportunity at this time for any councillor who wishes to do so, to document advice to the incoming council. So we had talked about that recently at council, that perhaps there'd be some advice that we would give to the next council. This is that opportunity to document that, and informally it'll be entered into the minutes. So, councillors, do you have any announcements that would be a benefit to the community or advice to give to the next council? I think we're all overwhelmed, perhaps, by the experience, indeed. Okay, then let us move forward. That brings us to agenda item 11. We have no matters for consideration in a closed session meeting of council tonight. For item 12, then, on our agenda, we have no matters to report about since we did not hold a closed session meeting of council. I've elected tonight to turn the chair over to Councillor Matt Richardson in order that the next item of business, this council's last confirmatory bylaw, can be conducted, since both Deputy Mayor Kellum and myself have conflicts. So, Councillor Richardson, let me just get the microphones here right for you too, all right? You're going to have to come over here.
Don't trip. Thank you. And a hush falls over the crowd. Council, as mandated good practice, acts near at the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called a confirmatory bylaw. I have the draft for a confirmatory bylaw number 143, 2022, which reads as follows. Excuse me. The bylaw number 143-2022 being a bylaw to confirm generally previously actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I get a motion for moving that, please? Councillor Seiler, you'll gladly first move that, and Councillor Behrens, would you second that? Thank you. All in favor? Call the vote, please. Thank you. Please note that Councillor Rothwell is in favor. That is carried. I'll come back and sign.
Thank you to Councillor Richardson for rendering brief service there to our council. Councillors, we have completed the deliberation and taken action on the business that has come before us tonight. In fact, it is mine to say that we have completed deliberation and taken action on all the business that has come to us this term. We have one last duty as the Council of 2018, and that is to adjourn. And I know who I want to call on for the motion to adjourn. Councillor Behrens will be our mover. Councillor Seiler will be our seconder. That's not debatable. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. A new council begins with an inaugural meeting on Monday, November 21st, a week from today. The public is invited to be witness to this on YouTube. This meeting is adjourned.